Who is the main hero of the Harry Potter series? If you're a fan of the movies, you can easily say Harry, but if you're a fan of the books, the answer is a little more complicated. Although the entire story is named after Harry himself, the finale of each year of Harry's life is more of a team effort, which involves someone or something pushing Harry to complete his ultimate task. And what if I told you that the Chamber of Secrets movie removed key details and elements from the book, which reveal that Harry Potter might not have been the sole hero in the defeat of Tom Riddle? In today's video, we're going to be uncovering exactly what happened down in the chamber and answering important questions about this significant event. Questions like, how did Harry really survive the basilisk? And how did he know to destroy the diary? My name is Gibby, and welcome back to episode 31 of Movies vs. Manuscripts, Harry Potter edition. This is the show where I compare the books to the movies and find all the differences along the way. And today we have a special finale episode for the last few scenes of the Chamber of Secrets. But first, I wanted to give a shout out to this commenter from a previous episode. Each week, I highlight one of the top comments from a past video, so be sure to share your thoughts down below when you're done watching. Per usual, I'll cover all the changes across the four major categories of characters, timeline, location, and plot. But before we dive into the analysis, let's recap what happened during these scenes in the movie. Picking up with where we left off last week, we see Harry speaking Parseltongue and entering the Chamber of Secrets. After going inside, he sees Ginny and runs up to check on her, dropping his wand in the process. Suddenly, Tom Riddle appears out of the shadows and begins talking to Harry, and even picks up his wand. Harry and Tom talk for a bit, and eventually Tom reveals what Ginny has been doing and his own true identity. Then after Harry tells him that Dumbledore is greater than he is, Fawkes flies in and drops the sorting hat. Tom then sets the basilisk loose and commands it to kill Harry, and Harry runs away, tripping and nearly dying in the process. Thankfully, Fawkes saves the day and gouges out the serpent's eyes. Harry then continues to run from the blind beast and barely makes it back to Ginny alive. But after checking on Ginny, the serpent bursts out of the nearby water, and Harry sees a shiny object appear in the sorting hat, and he grabs the sword of Gryffindor out of it. Then, running atop the nearby stone head, Harry faces the basilisk, stabbing it and getting bit in the process. He then climbs down and begins to feel the effects of the poison, and although the basilisk is dead, Riddle is happy to see that his plan will still work. But before dying, Harry grabs the diary and stabs it with the basilisk fang that was embedded in his arm, and Tom Riddle explodes as his memory is destroyed. Ginny then wakes up from her trance and sees Harry there hurt, but once again Fawkes comes to save the day as he flies in and uses his tears to heal Harry's wound. Then we cut to seeing Fawkes flying everyone out of the depths of the caves and back to the castle, where we then see Ron and Harry in Dumbledore's office. Dumbledore gives both of them special awards for services to the school, and then he instructs Ron to go mail a letter to Azkaban, leaving Harry there alone. Harry and Dumbledore then talk about Voldemort and how Harry feels similar to him, and then Malfoy arrives. After a tense exchange between Malfoy and Dumbledore, Malfoy leaves and Harry goes after him with the diary in hand. He then gives the diary back to Malfoy, who gives it to Dobby, and Dobby realizes that there's a sock inside, and now he is free. Malfoy, angry that he's just lost his servant, takes out his wand and is about to perform the killing curse, but Dobby retaliates with his own powerful magic, knocking Malfoy backwards. Finally, we cut to the last scene of the movie, which shows the end-of-year feast as Hermione returns from being petrified and Hagrid returns from Azkaban. Then the movie ends on this uplifting note of all of the students cheering for Hagrid. Now, before we get to the plot changes, let's talk about our first three categories of characters, timeline, and location, which are pretty easy this week. First, for characters, we're really only missing Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, who make an appearance in the last chapter. Other than that, we pretty much see everyone else who is mentioned in the book. Next, our timeline category only has one change, which is that the movie skips over the final days of their school year. In the book, we get some details which I'll mention in the plot changes, but in the movie, we see the feast and then the movie ends on Hagrid's return. No final classes, no train ride home, no nothing. Then finally, for location, we're missing McGonagall's office and the Hogwarts Express. Like I just mentioned, the book discusses the final moments of their year, including the train ride home, so that's a small location we should have seen, but we don't. Now, before we get into the plot changes, I just want to mention that I can't go word for word through the changes, so if you're looking to relive these moments for yourself, I'd highly encourage you to check out the audiobooks on Audible. You can claim one free audiobook using my link in the description, and you support the channel at the same time. Seeing as today is the final episode of the Chamber of Secrets, maybe you should get ahead and claim the Prisoner of Azkaban for free. Anyway, with that being said, let's get into the plot changes. In order to fully understand what's missing from the final scenes of the Chamber of Secrets, we need to break break my rules a little bit and look at some dialogue between Tom Riddle and Harry Potter. You see, our first change for this week is that the conversation they have in the film is extremely condensed compared to their talk in the book. The start of this chapter is very similar to the movie, with Harry entering the chamber, taking a look around, and then eventually finding Ginny. And in the book version, Tom Riddle essentially has his full stereotypical villain monologue. So although I won't be going word for word through things, I think it's important to know what the movie skipped over. And really, it can all be boiled down to one key theme, which is Ginny's involvement. We read in the book that Tom befriended Ginny, listening to all of her woes and secrets. We learn that she was upset at how her brothers picked on her, how she had to wear secondhand robes and use old books, and how the famous and great Harry Potter would never like her back. Tom explains that the more she poured her soul into him, the more he could pour his soul into her. He continues on to tell Harry how Ginny was the one who did all of the evil things this year at school, and how she would write in the diary about how she'd wake up with blood or feathers all over her and not remember what happened. And eventually, Ginny became aware that she must be the one attacking people, although she never remembered how. After some more of this from Tom, he gets to the part where he explains Hagrid's involvement and then he insults Dumbledore. And just like in the movie, Harry defends Dumbledore and then Fawkes flies in and gives the sorting hat to him. But this is where we come to our second change, which is another missing part of the dialogue. In the movie, Tom summons the basilisk right after Fawkes arrives. But in the book, he has one final question for Harry. How did he survive Voldemort's attacks? In the movie, Tom sort of asks these rhetorical questions without an answer from Harry, but in the book, he is genuinely wanting to know. He tells Harry that the longer he talks, the longer he lives, and forces Harry to tell him the secret of how he survived that night in Godric's Hollow. Harry explains that his mother sacrificed herself for him, and that's why he lived. Content with this answer, and feeling that he finally knows the secret of his previous downfall, Tom then summons the basilisk to come and kill Harry. And now we've come to the integral part of these scenes, which show us really who is responsible for the defeat of the giant serpent and the memory of Tom Riddle. Harry might have been the one wielding the sword, but in the book, we learn just how crucial Fawkes the Phoenix and the Sorting Hat were to Harry's success. And we can start revealing this truth by looking at our next change, which is that Harry gets the Sword of Gryffindor a lot faster than the movie shows, and the way he gets it is quite different. You see, we read that as the basilisk struggled with Fawkes pecking at its eyes, its tail accidentally swept the sorting hat over to Harry. Harry then put on the hat and started talking to it, asking for help over and over again. And then he felt a hard thud on his head. Of course, this thud was the feeling of the Sword of Gryffindor falling out of the hat. And that brings us to the next change, which is that the whole chase sequence in the movie never happened, as Harry quickly took the sword and in only a couple tries, stabbed the basilisk through the roof of its mouth, just like in the movie. But as we know from the movie, Harry gets bit right when he stabs the basilisk, and the venom of this giant serpent acts quite quickly, which is our next change. In the book, Tom Riddle walks over to Harry to watch him die from the poison. He taunts Harry and says that even Dumbledore's bird knows that he's dying, as Fawkes had flown beside Harry and was laying his head on Harry's arm. Obviously, in the movie, Harry is poisoned and then healed after the diary is destroyed, and Ginny wakes up. But in the book, Fawkes laying his head on Harry's arm in this moment healed him right then and there. Tom then shooed the bird away, upset that once again his plan to destroy Harry had failed, and now he had to move on to plan B, which is the next change we have, as the movie doesn't include Tom Riddle's attempt to kill Harry using Harry's own wand. This is something I always wondered about when watching the movie. Obviously, he had the ability to use the wand as he drew his name in the air, so why didn't he use it to snuff out Harry while he had the chance? Well, that's our next change, which is another one that shows how Fawkes' involvement is truly what saves the day. The movie shows Harry grabbing the diary of his own accord and then stabbing it. But in the book, Fawkes is the one who guides Harry in this direction, as right when Tom raised his wand to finish off Harry, Fawkes flew by and dropped the diary in Harry's lap, catching Tom off guard and making him pause. And in this split-second pause, Harry grabbed the basilisk fang and stabbed the book. Then, just like in the movie, we read about Ginny waking up and then talking a bit with Harry before they head out of the chamber. So without Fawkes there, Harry would have been killed by his own wand and maybe never would have thought to destroy the diary in the first place. But now that the fight is over, there's technically a change regarding Ron and Lockhart, as the movie removed their final moments in the caverns. In the book, we read that Harry and Ginny ran back to Ron, who had made enough progress on the rocks for them to get through the previously caved-in area. Ron then shows Harry what happened to Lockhart, and Ginny kept crying in the corner. Then Fawkes, using his glowing tail feathers, led them out of the tunnels and then flew them straight back up into Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, not to the outside of the castle like what we see in the film. Now, although we've gone over all the changes regarding Harry's time in the chamber, there's still the second half of these final scenes in the movie, and there's a lot more to cover, including Dobby's freedom later on. But first, we need to look at what happened after they got back up into the castle. The movie cuts right to Harry and Ron talking to Dumbledore, and although this does happen, there's a few things that take place first. To start, Fawkes leads them from Myrtle's bathroom to McGonagall's office, where Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were waiting. Harry then spent a decent amount of time sharing the entire tale start to finish, except once he got to the part about the diary, Harry faltered, as he didn't want to make it seem like Ginny was at fault for everything. But thankfully, Dumbledore recognized what was on Harry's mind and interrupted him, saying that Ginny was enchanted, and many wiser and older wizards have been duped by Voldemort before. Ginny then confessed, to the shock of her parents, who were outraged that she would even converse with an object like that diary, but Dumbledore continued to reassure them that Ginny was not in control of herself. Then he instructed them to take her to the hospital wing, where Madame Pomfrey would give her a cup of hot chocolate. Then, after the Weasleys left, Dumbledore sent McGonagall to alert the kitchens that the end-of-year feast was back on and to start preparing. And now the only people left in the office were Dumbledore, Ron, Harry, and Lockhart. Did you forget about Lockhart? Well, so did everyone else until Dumbledore asked the two boys what happened to him, which is our next change, as the movie ends Lockhart's involvement with the final moments in the chamber. In the book, the boys explained what happened down in the chamber, as Harry had left that part out of his story, and Dumbledore chuckled, saying that Lockhart had finally been impaled upon his own sword. Then he instructed Ron to take Lockhart to Madame Pomfrey as well, and mentioned that he wanted to have a few words with Harry alone. Also, during this interaction with Ron and Harry, Dumbledore tells them that they will both receive awards for services to the school and get 200 points each for Gryffindor. Then, as for Harry's conversation with Dumbledore, there really isn't anything worth noting as far as changes, which means our next change comes up when Malfoy enters. After Dumbledore is finished speaking with Harry, he tells Harry to go along and that he needed to write an ad for the Daily Prophet to hire a new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. And he says that he also needs to draft up a letter for Azkaban to get Hagrid to come back. So Harry takes his leave, but right when he's about to open the door, Malfoy walks in. Just like in the movie, Malfoy is upset that Dumbledore is back, but Dumbledore says that the other governors requested he return. But something that is quite different from the movie is the fact that in the book, Harry accuses Malfoy right then and there, saying that he gave the diary to Ginny that day in Flourish and Blots before the school year started. Malfoy then asks him to prove it, much like what we see in the movie after they leave Dumbledore's office, but in the book, Dumbledore butts in and says that no one can prove it, but he advises Lucius to not let any more of Voldemort's old school items get into the wrong hands, or else Arthur Weasley would be more than happy to trace any dark magical artifacts back to the Malfoys. And on that note, Malfoy angrily strode out of the office. Which brings us to our next change, as after Malfoy left, Harry asked for the diary and then shoved it inside his gross sock. That's right, in the movie he hides the sock inside the diary, but in the book, he puts the diary inside the sock, forcing Malfoy to remove the diary from the sock and then toss the gross slimy sock to the side, meaning that Dobby in the book receives the sock directly, as Malfoy accidentally tossed it to him without thinking. In the movie, I can see the reasoning behind changing this to make it a bigger reveal, but I feel like there's some sort of magical loophole that Malfoy could have been like, well, I didn't know there was a sock inside the book. Whereas in the book version, there's no plausible deniability, because he directly tosses the sock to Dobby. Anyway, as we know, after Dobby gets the sock, he is freed, but Malfoy's reaction in the book is quite different from the film. He's definitely still angry, but in the movie we see him almost perform a killing curse on Harry, which is absolutely insane. I mean, I know Malfoy is evil, but I think he is politically smart enough to not murder the most famous person in the wizarding world literally on school grounds in broad daylight. That wouldn't necessarily be in his self-interest, and if there's one thing we know about Malfoy, it's that he cares about himself. What really happens in the book is that he goes to physically assault Harry, but Dobby knocks him backwards just like what we see in the movie. Now we finally come to the last handful of changes regarding the end of the school year. Just like we've discussed the last few weeks, the movie keeps in line with its theme of ultra-condensing the timeline, and only shows us the feast, ending the movie on the lighthearted note of everyone cheering for Hagrid. But in the book, we get the full details of the end of the year. To start, the feast was different than the movie shows. We read that the feast lasted longer than any other Harry had ever been to, It went all night with everyone in their pajamas, and Hagrid arrived at 3:30 in the morning. All the petrified victims had returned to life, and Justin Finch Fletchley apologized profusely to Harry. We also learned that Harry and Ron's 400 points secured Gryffindor the House Cup for the second year in a row. And maybe the best part of it all for the students was that McGonagall got up and announced that exams were cancelled. Next, because the movie ends on this feast, we don't get to hear about the end of term or the train ride home. As for the end of term, we learn that Lucius Malfoy had been fired from his position as a governor of the school. And because of Lockhart's absence, Defense Against the Dark Arts classes were cancelled for the rest of the semester. Of course, Ron mentioned that this year they'd already had enough practice on that subject. And finally, the last change we have for this entire movie is the omission of their train ride home, which includes Ginny finally revealing Percy's secret. Of course, if you've been watching Movies versus Manuscripts, I've already mentioned it. But this is finally the part in the book where we read about Percy secretly dating Penelope Clearwater. And Ginny says that she had caught them kissing in a classroom one day. Ginny tells them to not make fun of Percy, as he has been quite distraught since Penelope was attacked and petrified. And Fred and George sarcastically told Ginny that they wouldn't dream of making fun of Percy for it. Then, after arriving at King's Cross Station, Hermione asks Harry if his uncle and aunt will be proud of him for saving the school this year. And Harry tells her and Ron that they'll be upset he had so many chances to die, but never did. And on that note, the book ends. So now that you've heard it all and can accurately view the movie and the book side by side, which version do you think is better? And more than that, how would you answer the question I posed at the beginning of this video? I think Harry is courageous and brave, but at the end of the day, he really got guided into this one big time. Ron realized that Moaning Myrtle's bathroom was the entrance to the chamber. Hermione figured out what the monster was, and Fawkes saved Harry's life 3 times and gave him the diary to destroy. All of these together make it hard to imagine that Harry would have ever survived on his own. And that's okay. Something I love about the Harry Potter book series is that J.K. Rowling consistently shared the message that you're never gonna be the hero alone. And I think in some ways, the early movies took away from this message and rested the sole responsibility and the results on Harry Potter alone. But enough of me. Now it's time for you to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and check out the series playlist to catch up on any episodes you might have missed so far. As you now know, we finished the Chamber of Secrets, so if this is your first time tuning in, or if you missed anything along the way, you can now binge watch every change for this second movie in the series. Other than that, have a great week, and I'll see you in the next episode.